Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about OEM hoses, how to assemble them, and the 37-degree flare. Stick around. So this video is going to be for anyone out there who is looking to spruce up their engine bay. Maybe you're doing it for aesthetic purposes and you just want to get rid of that old degraded rubber that's stiffened over the years. That's fine. Braided hoses are a great option because they're going to make your engine bay just pop. For other people, it might be functionality. The braided hose, it does protect the hoses. And if you're doing custom routing, maybe your fuel system, power steering system, whatever it may be, well, switching over to OEM hoses is a great option. So for myself, I've got several different buckets here of hoses, and each one contains different types. In the top one up here, I've got all of the kind of OEM stock hoses, silicone hoses that you can use for your heater system or your vacuum lines. Down in here is the Twist-Lok, steel braid, and nylon braids. And then the last one has all of the hard lines. So we're going to go into each of these, just kind of quickly go over the hoses in them, and then we'll talk about how we assemble these bottom two. So the first bucket here has some of the old rubber hoses that would be used for the vacuum lines. We've got others here like heater half-inch hose, fuel emission hoses, there's some for fuel injection systems. Some of the lines that are in here are going to be for your brake reservoir because you do need a different type of line for brake fluid. So those are some of the things to consider. Some of these are molded shapes, and I'll be honest, in some cases in the engine bay, you're going to still have to use some of these hoses because depending on how tight the bends are, you might not be able to put the steel braided hose in there. It might not be able to bend properly, or you're going to have to reroute it. Those are some of the things you'll have to consider. But either way, I keep a collection of these because every now and then I do use them. But for the most part, I like to switch over to the OEM hoses. So let's go dive into the next bucket. Okay, so my next bucket here has all of the silicone vacuum lines in different diameters. I've got some couplers here that are used on the intercooler system, some bigger ones, a bend, little offcuts that I hold on to. And then we also get into 3-ply heater hoses. So this one you can see the red on the inside there. So these are from more of an industrial supplier, but they work well. You can also, you can get better ones like this is HPS line here, triple ply, pre-molded. So there's plenty of options out there for silicone, and like I said, if you're working on your heater system or your vacuum line system, this is the best route to go. So now we get into my favorite bucket, and this is the OEM hoses. So what have we got in here? You've got your nylon braid, and I love using the black nylon braid, especially over here in my Evo. I've got a white engine bay, so the black braid looks really nice in it. However, if you look at the S14, well, it's a black engine bay. So I like using the steel braid in there because it just has a nice contrast color to it. Either way, it doesn't really matter. They both function the exact same. So yeah, nylon braid. Then we've got here the stainless steel braid, a few different sizes. This one here, this is actually PTFE. This is used for power steering systems and brake reservoir, or sorry, not brake reservoirs, just your brake system in general. The reason you use this is because those systems, they're going to see in excess of 1,000 PSI. You cannot use your regular braided hose and aluminum fittings for these high pressure applications. So in that case, you can either get pre-assembled ones. This, for example, is for a brake system here. It's got the 37-degree flare on the inside there, and it has been professionally crimped. So that's a great option. You can order it in, 36 inch, 48 inch, whatever the size may be. Go to your parts store and they'll be able to get you that. But if you're dealing with just a low pressure system, then you're going to be fine using, like I said, your stainless steel braid, your nylon braid, or the third option, which is Twist-Lok hose. So yeah, we'll quickly cover how to assemble the braided hoses and how to assemble the Twist-Lok hose, which is probably the simplest one to work with. So yeah, like I said, Twist-Lok is probably the easiest hose to work with, and you can see here right there, 300 psi, that's the rating. So like I said, if you're working with a high pressure power steering system line, do not use these. You will be very sad when it fails on you. But for your fuel system, this is a great option. It is super easy to assemble. You quite literally push this end here, the barbed end, into the end of the hose. That's it. I'm not actually going to put this one on because I don't want to cut it off after, but it is that simple, people. So -6, -8, -10, it comes in all sizes. And like I said, you can see right there, you got 37-degree flare on the inside. This is a great option if you're looking for ease of assembly. Okay, now if you want to go to the next level, that is going to be your steel braided and nylon braided hose. So the first thing to do is get a nice clean cut. Now this one's actually a bit rough right now. I haven't cleaned it up yet, but you can see that one of the best tips is to duct tape it down, mark out where you want to cut, put the duct tape around it nice and tight. That's going to help keep a clean cut when you do this. So options you have are to use a chop saw, a hack saw, or one of these kind of cable cutters. So there's ones that you can find on Amazon, eBay, Pegasus Auto, all sorts of different automotive performance stores where you can buy these cutters, and they give a very nice clean cut. Okay, so after you've made that clean cut, what you're going to want to do is peel off the duct tape. And sometimes this is a little tricky because, especially if you're using the chop saw, you're going to have kind of a gooey mess to work with. Okay. Another tip is to kind of just roll this on the bench a little, and that's just going to push all of that braided material up so that it's not kind of sticking out. And then you're going to take your flush cutters and just clean up any of the loose frayed pieces that are sticking up here. So there we go. In the end, you end up with a nice, clean, ready to go hose. So once you cut that hose, it's important to make sure you clean out the inside, especially when you're cutting with, say, the chop saw or the hack saw. You're going to have a lot of debris, so you're going to blow that out, use chemicals, whatever, to clean out the inside before you move on to assembling the hose. And you know what? Even after, it's good to still go and do another shot of cleaning, because you don't want any debris getting into, say, your fuel injectors, which is kind of the system I'm working on right now. The next thing is going to be to actually put the hose ends on. So it comes in two pieces. This first piece is going to be the one where you butt the hose up into the end of it, and we'll go to the vise to do that part. And then once the hose is inside there, we're going to flip it over, and this one here has threads on it, and it's going to thread into that, and it's going to catch on to the inside of this hose. It's going to compress it against the sides on here, and that's going to give you a good seal. So it'll get tightened all the way down, and then what you're left with is the actual hose end right here, and on the inside is the threads for an AN fitting and the 37-degree flare mating surface. So one of the tools I recommend is definitely a bench vise. This is going to make it much easier, but you're going to want to get these soft aluminum inserts for it that help to actually assemble the hose. So on the inside there are magnets, and they sit right into there. Oh, it's backwards. Okay, right like that. And then this makes the assembly much easier, because now I can take this first piece and just get it centered right there, clamp it right into there, and it won't damage the surface. Okay, so to get the hose into the hose end here, you're going to want to kind of stick it in at kind of like a 45-degree angle, and you're going to want to slowly rock it in until you get all of these little edges of the braid inside there. So it's a little hard to see, but you can use a screwdriver if you're having issues to just kind of help it in. And there we go. And now I've got all of those edges in there, and you're going to kind of just twist the hose down into it until it bottoms out. So once you've got the first piece onto the end of the hose there, you're going to then take it out of the vise, flip it around, and you're going to once again tighten it down like so. Okay, so now that that's in place, we're going to take the other end of the hose, put a little bit of assembly oil onto it, and then we're going to tighten that down. So you can start it by hand and you'll usually be able to get a fair bit of the way down. But at some point you're going to want to switch over. Now there are several options out there for how you can actually tighten this down. The first option is to use an aluminum AN wrench. So this one here is an adjustable one. You can also get ones that are set. And for something like this, you're going to tighten it down. It's actually got markings on it for where the -6 is, and you can use this to tighten it all the way. Nice thing about using the aluminum is it isn't going to mar the surface. The downside though is this is aluminum and it, as you can see on this one, has worn down over time. Another option is to just use a chrome wrench. And if you go very slow and gentle with it, you can also achieve the same finish without marring it. Now, like I said, the important thing is to make sure it is a nice, smooth finish on the inside of the wrench. Anyways, let's get this one tightened all the way down so you can see the final product. So you're going to want to tighten it all the way down until the two surfaces actually mate. And what you'll be left with is a nice, flush, great looking hose. So one of the things I should note is there are different types of hose ends. So what you saw there was a straight hose end, which is used right here on these three hoses. But there's other ones. You can get a 90 degree. Or right down here is a 180 degree. It's hard to see, but there's another one on this fuel system that's a 45 degree. There are plenty of options out there, and they're in -6, -8, -10. You can find them in all different sizes. So check out your performance store near you, or any of the online sellers. So now that you've got your hose all assembled, the next thing that we need to do is we need to adapt it. So in some cases, you're going to have, say, on a fuel cell, maybe there's already -8 fittings, -6 fittings on it, and you're set to go. This threads right onto the end, and you're all good. Commonly on something like, say, the coolant system or the vacuum system, you're going to come across stuff like this. So this here is a pipe thread fitting, and I like to carry a bunch of different size adapters for that. So that's down to a -4 right there. You can see all sorts of different sizes. So that's one of the types that are out there. If you're working on a Japanese vehicle or an Asian vehicle in general, you might also come across another one which is called BSPT. So BSPT is very similar to pipe threads, the NPT threads, but they are still slightly different. So you're going to need different adapters for that system. So in the case of some of those more obscure fittings, say if you're going from BSPT to -6 AN, you may need to go to your industrial suppliers nearby that do hose fittings, and that's where you're going to be able to find some of the more obscure fittings. So yeah, BSPT, NPT, that's just one of the examples. And on the note of pipe threads, it's also important to note that so here, this is, I think, a -8 fitting. On the pipe thread side, you're going to want to use the Teflon tape. That's part of the sealing mechanism. On the -6, on the AN side here, you are going to use no tape whatsoever. The mating surface is the actual seal. So whatever you do, do not use any sort of sealant or tape on AN fittings. They are meant to be assembled and disassembled over and over again and maintain a smooth mating surface. Another common type of adapter you may need for your car is going to be an ORB to AN adapter. So ORB, that's with an O-ring on it, and quite often the threads here would be the exact same as the AN. The difference being though that the O-ring is the actual sealing part of it, and unlike the AN fitting where the sealing is right on that 37-degree surface. Okay, so the last thing we need to discuss is how to adapt your AN hose fittings over to hard lines. So this here is the hard line, the fuel line from my S14. And what we have is a barbed end, which is where your fuel hose would attach onto with the use of one of these hose clamps. Now, since we're switching over to an AN system, we're going to need to adapt that hard line. So there's several options out there for adapting it. One of the options is these compression fittings. So they're two-part, and there's a little tiny insert inside that goes over the end of the hose, and then you tighten them down. Now what I found, and it's you can probably see it a bit better there, you can see how the aluminum there completely tore apart. This fuel line is a hardened steel and was near impossible to tighten this down all the way. So I actually abandoned using the compression adapters and decided to go over to a 37-degree flare. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do one of these 37-degree flares and assemble the tube nut onto it. Okay, so when you're doing a hardline flare, there's a few tools you're going to need. You're going to need a cutter to cut the hardline itself, and then you're going to need these either a file, a deburr, one of those. Sometimes the cutter actually comes with the deburr on it. That is to get a nice clean cut on the end of the tube. The last thing you're going to need is the actual flare tool. So for myself, I use a rigid model number 377. That is the tool that I use. It is one of the best flare tools out there, short of going to an actual industrial high-grade one. So it's very easy to use. You start by cutting the tube here. Okay, so once you've got that cut, you're going to quickly deburr it. So that you have a nice clean cut. Now, like I said, this is 5/16 line that I'm working with, which is actually a -5 flare. So that's not one that you often see in, say, a performance shop for vehicles. But you can still find adapters. I know Earl's actually makes adapters. Here's actually one of them. A little hard to see, but that's a -5 to -6 adapter. So it is a size that you can do. And luckily, this rigid tool here actually has a spot for 5/16. Some of them do not. So, first thing to do, make sure that the hose is flush, or sorry, not the hose, but the hard line is flush into the tool. Okay, so you're going to get that tightened down, and you're going to bring, you can kind of see over here, you're going to tighten down the tool, and that's going to actually lock the line into place. So once that's nice and snug, you can actually start to do the flare. So the reason I like this one is it's a ratcheting type of tool, and once you tighten it down far enough, it'll actually release. So very simple. You can do this by hand, and this is, like I said before, this is hardened steel lines, and this tool is remarkably easy. There we go. When you feel that snap, it has released, and you can now back it off. It's going to take quite a few turns to get that backed out completely. But There we go. We've ended up with a very nice 37-degree flare. Now you can take a little bit of sandpaper or file just very lightly if there's any burrs left over. There shouldn't be if you had deburred it properly at the start. But in my case, I was going quick here, show you guys. Anyways, you end up with a very, very nice 37-degree flare. So obviously we got a nice flare there, but we're missing something, and that's going to be the tube nut and the sleeve that goes on here to complete this this line. Now I don't have any for that one right now because they're currently installed on the car, but I do have an example here on a -3 brake line. So here you can actually see the sleeve, and so this sleeve here is what actually seals up right there. It helps to tighten it up against the AN fitting. So this is the tube nut, and on the inside is the flared line. Another thing to note, what I'm holding here is nickel copper line. So when you're working in a car with the stock lines, you typically have these hardened steel lines. They are a pain in the ass to work with. They are very, very tough to bend. This here though, this nickel copper stuff is remarkable because you can actually bend it by hand, just like that, to make some pretty interesting shapes in the engine bay. So over here in my Evo, you can actually see where the hard lines, this is the nickel copper for the brake system, those are all bent by hand. And over on this side, same thing. So you can see all the bends back there, straightened by hand. Yeah, it's not perfect. You can get a tube straightener to get a better job, but it still works remarkably well. And yeah, like I said, super easy to flare, super easy to bend. I can't recommend this stuff enough. So that's it. That's the assembly of an AN hose, how to do a flare on a hard line, and some of the different things you need to know about adapters and how to get these systems to work together. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, please give me some feedback. I love reading the comments. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them there. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to have more videos as I continue on with this S14 drift car. And anything you guys want, just ask for it and I'll post it up.